What's going on, everybody? It's your friend from the New Music Monday podcast, Devon Marcel Whitaker, a.k.a. Dev Del Molino, a.k.a. your friendly neighborhood music plug. And today, I'm here to share with you why Injury Reserves, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, is my album of the year. Spoiler alert, I fucking love this album, and I want to tell y'all exactly why. So really quick before we do that, if you don't follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, here on YouTube at Bridge City Boys, you can find me at Dev Del Molino or at 6dev6 if you want to follow me on those other platforms. And really quickly, follow my gang, okay? I have a group page, Bligatory. You mostly find it on Instagram. And we do community album reviews. We organize community album reviews that you can get involved with and send a score and vote for top tracks. So really quickly, I wanted to mention that just this week, starting Monday, September 20, 2021, we're going to be reviewing 5 albums, a couple new ones in Baby Keem, The Melodic Blue, and Star-Crossed by Casey Musgraves. And then we have some absolutely heavy-hitting classics that we're going to talk about this week, too. In End Traducing by DJ Shadow, The Low End Theory, A Tribe Called Quest, absolute stone-cold hip-hop classic if you don't know it. And then The Glow Part 2 by The Microphone. So all 3 of these albums are extremely legendary, and the 2 albums that are newer I'm excited to review as well. But without further ado, let's talk specifically about Injury Reserve and their latest album. So I assume anybody that's coming to this review is probably a fan of the group, probably knows what their situation is at this time, and some of the context and pretense that surrounds this album you may be aware of. But if you're not, one of the members of this group passed away. They're just a rap trio. 3 guys, 2 rappers and 1 producer. They hail from Tempe, Arizona, and they've been putting out music for quite some time. Very early on when they started, you would look at these guys and be surprised that they were a rap band. And then on top of that, you would be surprised to hear how dope the music was that they were coming up with. They are kind of a gang of misfits, and they've always sort of embraced that about themselves and their craft. And like I said, eventually in 2020, one of the rap vocalists in this group would pass away. And as a fan of the group, as someone who really loves their music, when I heard that Steppa had passed, first of all, it was very, very sad for music. It was sad for this tight-knit group of friends that made music together. And then on top of that, I had to sit and sort of wonder if they were going to continue to produce music moving forward, or if they had something in the vault that they were going to release. Because again, 2019 Injury Reserve album kind of sat at the precipice of all the work they had put together for years prior. And so if it had to end on that chapter, it would be somewhat fitting. But lo and behold, they announced at some point this year, earlier on in the year, that they were going to release an album, that they had made this album in 2019, and had sort of finished it around the time that Groggs had tragically passed away, and that they were going to release it on this specific date of September 15th. Now, I don't know if that date is specifically significant. I'm not sure. I wasn't able to figure that out. If somebody knows, drop that down in the comments, please. But again, it's called By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And if you're familiar with that title, it comes from, they are directly referencing an Issac Hayes song on a pretty legendary Hot Buttered Soul album that dropped in 1969. If you haven't heard that, pretty essential piece of music, and you should hear at least that song, but the album in general is wonderful. Now, that song is originally a song that was made a few years prior by Jimmy Webb. So it was originally a country song, and it's had several redos, reiterations, references, and whatnot throughout the years. So there's a R&B and pop version of this song, jazz and country and rock versions of the song. Like, they all sort of exist. Very famously, like I said, Issac Hayes did this as well. So Issac Hayes' version is a 18-minute song. It's kind of different than most of the other versions in that it has this long sort of chronicling of the events that take place leading up to this road trip to Phoenix from LA that is, most notably seen in all the other versions of these songs. With that being said, there were 2 singles released for this album. Knees, which was the first song that we sort of heard since the death of Stepa Jake Roggs. And then they followed it up with Superman That, which is the second song in the track listing. That song, really interesting with its beat in that it uses the Athens, France sample from the Black Country New Road song that came out earlier this year on their album for the first time. They are known for being incredibly glitchy and just kind of balls to the wall. And that sample, that beat that they ended up using, Parker Corey specifically, really comes in and doubles up the ante on how crazy they are naturally. So that's really fun, because as an album experience from front to back, I'm just sort of enthralled in the instrumentals that I'm able to hear that come together with so many moving parts, a lot of times sounding very dense, and then being able to transition into these other moments that are somewhat desolate. This whole project feels apocalyptic. It feels like the residue of destruction is just sort of lingering in the background at all times. Richie with a T on here is extremely prominent throughout the entire track listing, sort of dominates the vocal space that you hear in most of this. And we do have guests. We have Zaloopers on SF San Francisco. Zaloopers is awesome from Detroit, excels in that abstract rap, artistic rap space. Remember, we said this album was initially recorded in 2019. And to me, I'm kind of hearing the Zaloopers from the Dynamite album, which to me is his best album. And that came out, I think, in 2019 as well. So it would not surprise me if this entire track was kind of one of the older ones. Because again, Zaloopers sounds right out of that flow that he was using during that time. And so the first 3 songs, they're interesting, but it's really when you get to Footwork in a Forest Fire, then to Ground Zero, then to Smoke Don't Clear. That right there, even just in the titles of those songs, kind of strikes me as a progression, as kind of a small story there within the context of the album. And these guys are using repetition to their benefit in a lot of cases. They're just repeating phrases and refrains and sort of emphasizing certain aspects of the story or just kind of what's going on inside the album and making things sort of stick in your mind in a certain way. I feel like every one of these songs does that to one degree or another. I think there's a lot of different interpretations you could derive from this album in all of its different 11 songs, but these are some of the things that are really sticking with me. It's how we interact with things that have taken place within the past, or things that only now exist in the past, whether that be memories, people, events, or anything like that you can no longer physically touch, and sort of the grieving process and the remembrance of those things. That to me is incredible. And it's the way that they continue to emphasize it as the album moves forward that I think makes it such an awesome execution of whatever ideas they had going into this. Very easily, top picks for you could be my favorite song on this album. It's absolutely my favorite moment or set of verses from Richie with a T on this, because it's a moment that feels like he's speaking very directly about the loss of Groggs. And again, kind of how things from the past continue to reverberate throughout the present and in the future in a way that gives us some sense of the past. You know, people, especially in today's world where so many things are documented, truly live on past their days. Right, and that memory sort of disseminates itself through all of us, through the people that they knew most closely, and I think he captures that amazingly in this one track. So it is one of my favorites. It's absolutely here. And in general, it's really the second half of this album that I find so tremendous. And it starts with top picks for you, but it goes into Wild Wild West and Postpartum, which are great. It's Knees and By Storm that just blow me away to finish that album. Knees was a single, the initial single, and I didn't listen to it when it came out. I kind of knew this was a project that I was going to want to hear in its entirety and just sort of go in completely blind for it. And I am so glad that I did that, because this is the perfect single for this album, and truly just encapsulates a lot of what's going on here in a profound way. You'll notice that Groggs is not on a lot of these songs. Actually, he's really only on like 3 of them in terms of vocally being there. And this is the song where he is featured most prominently, and we hear him with a full open verse, and we hear him say a lot of things that kind of foreshadow, his premature death. And we kind of knew that in the past he had struggled with addiction and alcoholism and substance abuse. But this song kind of shows you the state of mind in what may have been, not the final days, but sort of this final phase of what would be his life. It's incredibly eerie to hear what he's saying and have it reflected upon, the news of his passing. And By Storm is just wow. Just wow, wow, wow to me. The guitar riff that defines the track, it sounds incredibly bittersweet. It sounds like this bittersweet send-off to Groggs, to the songs on the album itself, and just anything in the past that has been lost in the fire, just sort of coming to peace with moving forward in life and taking the things with you, at least in your mind, that you can. Again, production on this album, I think from song 1 to song 11 is unbridled brilliance. This track, I can literally hear like a storm brewing in it and subsiding by the song's end, and to sort of finish off the album. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about Injury Reserve. And in most of their albums, especially in recent projects, it feels that, the producer truly feels like the third member of the group, and without words is speaking for himself, or putting his own artistic input into what's going on and affecting the songs in a meaningful, emotional way that you can feel, that you can understandably sort of digest as a listener. So while I don't see it as a perfect 10 out of 10 album, I would have to give this a 9. I would have to say that this is quite easily, if not the best album of the year. It's one of the 3 best albums I've heard this year from any genre, because of the purpose that it carries, and the execution, and the love and the care that went into so many of the ideas. Again, a lot of the with that being said, I have nothing left to say, and I want to hear what y'all think. If you could go in the comment section and tell me what the best songs were, what your 3 favorite songs were, what you would rate this album if you like doing that, score it. We're going to review this album on Bligatory, so follow Obligatory and wait for that review to come up if you want to give it a 10 out of 10. And remember, art without favor is like a windmill without wind. I haven't said that in a long fucking time. Molino,